Never go to the second location. Always trust your gut. Stay paranoid.
Hello, my name is Chrissy Champagne, and you are listening to Residue, a true crime podcast dedicated to keeping you paranoid. Today on Residue, we will be discussing the truth behind the movie Heavenly Creatures, directed by Peter Jackson and starring Kate Winslet and Melanie Lynskey. And before we get started, you all know that you can follow me on Instagram at Residue Podcast, Facebook at Residue, a true crime podcast, and TikTok at Residue, a true crime podcast. And as I always say, the greatest thing you can possibly do for any podcast that you love is leave a positive review, especially on Apple or Spotify. And I have been receiving some fantastic feedback from you guys. I love you all. I'm going to share a review with you that I got this week on Spotify. This is from Melissa. Hi, Melissa. First off, your voice is incredibly soothing. Thank you. I could listen to you all day, and the way you tell stories keeps me completely hooked. And I especially love how you dive into the truth behind movies. It adds such a unique and interesting perspective. I actually found you through a short clip on Instagram, and now I listen on Spotify daily. You've become a part of my routine. Please don't stop what you're doing. You're amazing at it. And yes, I definitely stay a little paranoid. You are amazing. Thank you so much. That made my day when I saw that. Every review that you guys leave is so magical, fantastic. I love having little conversations with you on Instagram, TikTok, Spotify, because we can talk back and forth to each other on Spotify. I love seeing an Apple review because, as you know, Apple is the one that pushes your podcast out to more people, the more reviews that you get. And don't forget, I still have stickers. I just mailed a bunch out yesterday. So if you did leave a positive review, just contact me in my DMs or email and let me know, and I will send out some stickers with a cute little thank you card. I literally could not do this without you guys. Love you all. Resi Crew forever. And before we begin with today's episode, remember, listener discretion is always advised. Heavenly Creatures is a 1994 psychological drama based on the real-life case of Pauline Parker and Juliette Hulme. It's directed by Peter Jackson, and this was before he made The Lord of the Rings. It is considered one of the most powerful true crime films ever made. The movie tells the story of two teenage girls in 1950s New Zealand who form this intense, obsessive friendship. Pauline, played by Melanie Lynskey, is a shy and isolated girl who is very imaginative, and Juliette, played by Kate Winslet, is confident, charismatic, and equally creative. These two bond over fantasy stories, art, writing, and creating an imaginary world. And as their friendship deepens, it becomes all-consuming to the point where they begin to reject reality and other relationships. This movie is magical. That's literally the best way to describe it. It blends fantasy with reality. It visually shows the girls' imagination. They have fantasy kingdoms that appear on screen. There's dream sequences mixed with real events. It's a gorgeous film. This is also the feature film debut for Kate Winslet and Melanie Lynskey. Heavenly Creatures was an Academy Award nominee in 1994 for Best Original Screenplay. And in the year 1994, this film made the top 10 of the year list in Time Magazine, The Guardian, the Sydney Morning Herald, and the New Zealand Herald. It appears in the book 1001 Movies You Must See Before You Die. So Heavenly Creatures isn't just about a murder. It's about how these two isolated teenage girls created a world so powerful that it overtook their reality, leading to a tragic outcome. Heavenly Creatures currently has a 95% critic review on Rotten Tomatoes and an 83% audience. So let's read a review from Rotten Tomatoes. This comes from user Blue Bee. 5 stars, an all-time classic. It's like someone took Tim Burton and Sam Raimi and merged them together. You'd get this. It's a dark drama, comedy, and fantasy mixed together in one of the most surreal things I've ever seen. The bizarre, frantic camera work, amazing fantasy scenes, and just very quirky original scenes in general are almost unforgettable overall. And before we get started, as you know, all of my sources are in the show notes, and my main source today was the book Anne Perry, The Murder of the Century by Peter Graham. And I did want to mention there's actually a great podcast episode from Women in Crime on this case. Two teenage girls, their clothes speckled with blood, ran toward a small shop in Christchurch, New Zealand. Inside of the shop, a woman named Agnes Ritchie was working when she saw these two girls panicked and frantic, just covered in blood. One of the girls screaming, "Please, can somebody help us? Mummy has been terribly hurt. She is dead." Now, these girls appeared to be eerily calm, almost in shock, and they claimed that Pauline's mother had fallen and hit her head on a rock. But when help arrived, the truth was far more disturbing. The shopkeeper, Agnes, she's like, show me what happened. Show me where your mother is. We'll go get help. She even phones a doctor. Now, Juliette was worried about all the blood on her, and she wanted to immediately wash up. So Agnes took the two girls to a sink and had them clean themselves up while she's running around trying to get help. Agnes rushes back to the girls in the bathroom washing up, and she asks them if there's anything that they need. They say that they really want their fathers. Can she please call their fathers? So Agnes gives the two girls some tea, and they sit and they wait for their fathers to arrive. And as they're sitting, Agnes is asking them, like, what happened? This is horrifying. Can you tell me how your mother was hurt? And Pauline says she slipped on a plank and hit her head on a brick. Her head kept bumping and banging as she fell. And then Pauline's friend, Juliette, sitting there, sipping her tea, goes, "Don't think about it. It's only a dream. We'll wake up soon. Let's talk about something else." I mean, they're in the middle of this horrific event. They're literally covered in blood. And this girl is saying, yeah, let's just talk about something else. But of course, Agnes is feeling a little strange about this situation, but she pushes it off thinking they've got to just be in shock. And who are these two young women, Pauline Parker and Juliette Hulme? Best friends. Pauline Parker was born May 26, 1938 in Christchurch, New Zealand, into a working-class family. Her early childhood was marked by serious illness, and at the age of 5, she contracted osteomyelitis, which is the infectious inflammation of bone, and it is commonly caused by bacterial infection, but rarely can be due to fungal infection, and symptoms are commonly non-specific but may include pain, swelling, and redness around the affected areas. Now, due to her condition, she spent many months in the hospital enduring painful treatments that left her with a lasting leg condition, and she actually suffered from a permanent limp. And this experience shaped her personality as she became more withdrawn, more intellectually focused. Despite her health struggles, Pauline was described as bright, mature, highly imaginative, and she had a strong talent for writing and creative expression. She attended Christchurch Girls High School, where she was placed in advanced classes, and she continued to develop her interest in storytelling and art. So Pauline's life changed significantly when she met Juliette Hulme in 1952. And let's just get this out of the way right now. I cannot say her last name. Even before I had a podcast, I could not say this girl's last name. So I don't want to hear about it. Just Just go with it. Okay, guys? Thank you. Thank you so much for understanding. The two quickly formed an intense and all-consuming friendship. They were bonding over their shared interest in fantasy, creativity, literature, writing. And as their relationship deepened, Pauline became increasingly distant from her family. Pauline's father, Herbert Rieper, Bert, he ran a fish shop, and her mother, Honorah, she was a housewife. Juliette Hulme was also born in 1938, October 28th. She was born into a very different background. She was the daughter of Dr. Henry Hulme. He was a prominent British physicist, and her family moved to New Zealand, as I said, in 1948, when he became rector of Canterbury University College. So Juliette was confident, charismatic. She was strikingly self-assured. In fact, in the book by Peter Graham and Perry, The Murder of the Century, the author states that Juliette Hulme was as sure of her beauty as she was of her outstanding mental ability and many talents. And like Pauline, Juliette spent time in hospitals, which contributed to her feelings of loneliness and this desire for deep emotional connection. So when she moved to Christchurch, New Zealand, she enrolled at Christchurch Girls High School, where she met Pauline Parker. Now, even though Juliette was as certain of her beauty as she was of her intelligence and talents, her life was far from stable, and she suffered from tuberculosis, experiencing long periods of isolation, and she also lived in a household filled with tension and conflict between her parents. So despite their differences, these two teenage girls, they shared something crucial. They both had experienced serious illness and deep loneliness, and they had come, quote, from the book, within a whisker of dying, and both longed for connection. I mean, these girls form a very obsessive teenage girl relationship with each other. In fact, Juliette said to her mother, "Mommy, I've met someone at last with a will as strong as my own." Now, I don't know if I have that accent right, but I'm just trying to do it the same way the guy did in the Audible book that I heard it from. Because this guy was talking through this whole book, like, talking like this. So every time I am trying to tell you this story, I just so badly just want to start going like this. I feel like it would give it so much more emphasis on what I'm trying to say. Their friendship becomes intensely close, fueled by this shared creativeness. They were writing stories. They were inventing this fantasy world that they called the fourth world. And Juliette's strong personality and ideas had a significant influence on Pauline. And together, they developed beliefs and fantasies that distanced them from reality. And their families started to grow concerned, and they did attempt to separate them, especially when Juliette's family planned to move abroad. And the girls did not react very well to this. They reacted with desperation. And this desperation is what culminates in their joint involvement in the 1954 murder of Pauline's mother. And this would go on to be one of the most shocking crimes that would ever hit New Zealand. Are you looking for a new queer podcast to binge? Look no further than But I'm a Lesbian. This podcast reviews WLW movies, obsesses over the chemistry between characters, and spontaneously spirals into iconic side convos. Gays, allies, and movie lovers tune in weekly for hot takes, chaotic stories, and their version of F, Marry, Kill, Munch, Merge, Murder. Hosted by lesbian besties Caitlin and Angie, But I'm a Lesbian dives into sapphic films, breaking down what worked, what didn't, and what made them cry, and what made them yell in frustration. From cult classics to underrated gems to movies that fully missed the mark, nothing is off limits. It's not just movie reviews either. The show blends queer lifestyle, pop culture, LGBTQ history, and the kind of conversations that feel like hanging out with your fun and most unhinged friends after the credits roll. Follow But I'm a Lesbian wherever you get your podcast. So Juliette and Pauline, they meet in 1952 at Christchurch Girls High School. They become inseparable. And now Pauline was completely captivated by Juliette. And their friendship grew very quickly. It was very intense. It was all-consuming. They spent nearly all of their time together sleepovers, typical teenage girl sleepovers, shared routines. They're even bathing together well into their teenage years. And together they created an elaborate fantasy world, as I said, called the Fourth World. And they ruled as powerful queens inside of this world. They invented characters. They wrote all of these stories, and they even developed their own religious and belief system. And this imaginary world became so real to them that it didn't even compare to their ordinary lives. Like, their everyday lives were nothing. This fantasy world was everything that they wanted. And at the time, this closeness between the girls, it raised serious concern because, come on, it's the 1950s. And such an intense same-sex relationship was often labeled as deviant or even mentally ill. I mean, you would be considered mentally ill. And their families feared the girls' bond was unhealthy, and they began trying to separate them. By 1954, Juliette's life was unraveling. Her father's career was collapsing, and her parents' marriage was breaking down. Now, Juliette's family said that she could be moody and, quote, downright difficult, and the family was always hostage to her uncertain temperaments. Now, Juliette's father, Dr. Henry Hulme, he has this prominent position at Canterbury University College. This is the whole reason that the family even moved to New Zealand. But his relationship with the college starts to steadily deteriorate. And in March of 1954, he was asked by his colleagues to resign. So the family has now lost their entire income. And it's become common knowledge to Dr. Henry Hulme that his wife, Hilda Hulme, is having an affair with a close family friend named Bill Perry. And now Hilda is like, maybe we should just get a divorce. I mean, you got to go get a new job. I just want to stay here with Bill. He lives like right next door, She doesn't want to leave. Juliette doesn't want to leave. But Henry is like, hell no. You know what he actually said to her? He said, we should be adults about this and stay married. I'm like, excuse me, sir? God, the 50s were fucking wild, So Hilda's like, okay, fine, we'll just stay married. How about this? How about you go to England by yourself? You look for work. I'll stay here so that I can pack up the house. And they also had a son. Juliette had a brother named Jaunty. She'll stay there with Jaunty, and when the house is packed up, those two will come to England. But Juliette is very sick, and she has tuberculosis, and she can't be moving back and forth, and she needs to stay in the perfect environment for her sickness. So they decide that Juliette is going to go to Johannesburg and live with Henry's sister. What a nightmare. What a damn nightmare. And Juliette loses her damn mind. And Pauline loses her damn mind. She's like, no, hell no. You're not leaving to go far away from me. We have to figure something out. We have to figure something out quick. Pauline and Juliette being separated, this was an unbearable thought. I mean, these two dreamed of running away together. So they had a plan. First, they're going to go to South Africa. And then they're going to go to the United States. And once they're in the United States, let me tell you, those two were ready to conquer Hollywood. They were going to write their scripts for their magical movies about their lives, about their magical land, the Fourth World. And they were going to sell these scripts to Hollywood. They were going to become writers and they were going to become famous. This was part of the plan. But there was one obstacle in their way. And that was Pauline's mother, Honorah. She would never allow this. So in their minds, they're thinking, there is only one thing that stands between us and our Hollywood dreams, and that is your damn mother. So they devise this carefully planned murder. Now, the girls were so obsessed with each other that the nature of the relationship between Juliette and Pauline remains one of the lingering mysteries of this case. And now, according to a WordPress.com article, the girls cared for one another so much that they would kill to keep from being apart. So were they friends, or were they lovers, or was this something else? And looking back at the past, we cannot know for sure how someone would have been identified due to the fact that they did not have the same knowledge of sexuality or freedom of expression that we have today. So, when interviewed about their reactions to the murder for the documentary Reflections of the Past, several of Juliette and Pauline's classmates said that they and their families had to look up the word lesbian after seeing it in the press about this case. And as this article states, and the reason that I'm bringing this up is because the primary document concerning the girls' relationship was Pauline's journals. I mean, she had thousands and thousands of journal entries talking about their relationship, talking about their fantasy world, about how they should get rid of her mother. I mean, these two teenage girls were planning to murder one of their parents so that they could stay together. And later, when a psychologist asked Pauline about her relationship with Juliette, she answered, "Juliette is not a friend. She is much closer." And the psychologist says, "Well, isn't that love?" Pauline responds, "I don't know. I just know that I care for her more than anyone else in the world." And I do have to mention that there was a point where Pauline had a boyfriend. While she was best friends with Juliette, she met this boy named Nicholas, and this was why Juliette was in the hospital. This was while Juliette was in the hospital. So she meets this boy named Nicholas, and she has a sexual relationship with him. And Juliette does not like this. She does not want Pauline with this guy. And Pauline actually breaks up with this boy named Nicholas on Juliette's 15th birthday, which some people believe is not insignificant. When Juliette did return home, Pauline wrote in her journal, "It was wonderful returning with Juliette. It was as if she had never been away. I believe I could fall in love with Juliette." Most of Pauline's journal entries are from June 11th through June 20th of 1954. And in one of these journal writings, Pauline writes about how she and Juliette would reenact how the saints would make love in bed until they were exhausted. And she described it as being, quote, "wonderful, heavenly, beautiful, and ours. We felt very satisfied indeed. We have now learned the peace of a thing called bliss, the joy of the thing called sin." I'm going to read you a couple of these journal entries. I'm telling you there are thousands of them, and I do have a link where you can see most of them in my show notes, but I want to let you know first that they would refer to each other. Pauline would refer to Juliette as Deborah most times in these. They had little nicknames for each other. They also, instead of saying the word murder, they would say it like moida, like an old school, like, "I'm gonna murder him" type of thing. They would even spell it that way. So Pauline would spell this out, Moider. This is from June 19th, 1954. And this is also from Pauline's diary. Now, I must tell you that most of these are from Pauline's diary because Juliette's mother had all of Juliette's journals and diaries burned. She actually asked her groundskeeper to rally up all of Juliette's belongings, including diaries and journals, and burn anything that she wrote in. So none of those could be used in Juliette and Pauline's trial later. So this is from Pauline's journal. "We practically finished our books today, and our main idea for the day was to murder mother. This notion is not a new one, but this time it is a definite plan which we intend to carry out. We have worked it out carefully and are both thrilled by the idea. Naturally, we feel a trifle nervous, but the pleasure of anticipation is great. I shall not write the plan down here, as I shall write it up when we carry it out, I hope. We both spent last night, the one before, having a simply wonderful time in every possible way. We also planned a few odd pictures and recast most of the, quote, Saints' Christmas. We burnt all of our film books this evening." June 21st, 1954, just 2 days later, Pauline writes, "I rose late and helped Mother vigorously this morning. Deborah rang and we decided to use a rock and a stocking rather than a sandbag. We discussed the murder fully. I feel very keyed up, as though I were planning a surprise party. Mother has fallen in with everything beautifully, and the happy event is to take place tomorrow afternoon. So next time I write in this diary, Mother will be dead." How odd. Yet how pleasing. I have discussed various odd saints with her today, as I thought I would be interesting to have her opinion. She loathes that and it. I washed my hair this afternoon. I came to bed at 8:45. And this is the most chilling entry, June 22nd, 1954, Tuesday. "The day of the happy event" is written at the top of the page. "I am writing a little of this up in the morning before the death. I felt very excited and the night before Christmas-ish. last night. I did not have pleasant dreams, though. I am about to rise. This teenage girl is writing about the fact that it feels like Christmas. It feels like Christmas Eve because she's going to kill her mom today. And last night she couldn't sleep. It was like Christmas Eve. And the day has arrived that they will carry out their plan June 22nd, 1954. What they thought was going to happen was they would invite Pauline's mother, Honorah, on a walk in Victoria Park. And now Juliette would walk a little farther ahead of the two. And then she would drop a stone on the ground. She would go, "Oh my God, come over here. You have to look at this stone." And when Honorah would bend down to look at the stone, that is when Pauline would swing, hit her mother in the head with one quick blow, a stocking full of rocks, just wail her with it. Then she would fall, and they would say, "Oh, she slipped. It was just an accident." But that isn't how it worked. They thought it was only going to take one quick blow to the head, but her mother fought back. Honorah fought back like hell. She had 47 wounds on her body. Those girls had to hold her down. They stood there. They held her down. They beat her to death. And then they ran back up the hill and they got some help. And they claimed, "Oh my God, she just fell." After they murder Pauline's mother, they run back up. They run for help. They are attempting to maintain this story. This is when they run in to the shop owner, Agnes, and Pauline says she slipped on a plank and she hit her head, and she kept bumping and banging as she fell. Honorah's body was a mess. She had deep gashes around her scalp. She had a smashed skull. One of the detectives said her head had literally been bashed to pieces. And it did not take long for the police to realize that there was way more to this story than these girls were telling them, because these two were not in any kind of trauma at all. They were actually laughing and giggling. I mean, they're both brought in for questioning. They're separated, and Pauline confesses. She writes down in her confession that she did it all on her own. Nobody else helped, which is a little concerning because obviously they know Juliette was there. They go to Juliette and then Juliette confesses. I mean, these two were best friends. They were in this together. They were going down together. Their trial begins and it is a media circus, even for the 1950s. This was just the talk of the town. And of course, the diary entries are on full display and the girls' sexuality is the main focus because at this point in time, homosexuality is seen as insanity. These two are insane. So the defense is going to claim insanity. And of course, the media used this and they just ran with it for all of their articles. It didn't help much that neither girl showed any remorse. And what was really strange is that while they're awaiting trial, they're actually jailed together. So they're together the entire time. And these two stuck to their story like they were not going to switch on each other at all. So the defense argued that the girls were not guilty because they suffered from a rare disorder called folie à deux. And this is a shared delusional disorder. So folie à deux is a shared psychotic disorder. It's rare, and it's when two or more closely associated individuals, they share the same delusion or the same mental illness. And symptoms include paranoid, bizarre delusions. They're frequently treated by separating the individuals and utilizing antipsychotics and providing psychotherapy. And this usually arises when a dominant partner with a psychotic disorder influences a more passive or susceptible person to adopt their delusions. And like I said, during the trial, the diary entries are read. But as I said, Juliette's are not read because the groundskeeper burned all of her journals. Now, despite the defense's arguments, both girls were found guilty of murder, and because of their ages, 15 and 16, they were spared the death penalty. Now, they were supposed to be given a minimum of 10 years because they were underage, but the Minister of Justice had the final say in their sentence, and both Juliette and Pauline served 5 years each. And they never had any contact with each other. As a part of their deal to be released from prison, it is said that they were told they are never to contact each other, they are never to see each other, no matter what. Now, when they were released, Juliette's release was unconditional, and she was immediately able to fly to Italy and join her father, but Pauline was placed on probation. So she had to stay in New Zealand, but once her probation was over, after 6 months, she left the country. Both girls changed their names. Now, some people say that the government actually gave them new identities. Now, Pauline, she took on the name Hilary Nathan, and she lived a very quiet and private life. She became deeply religious, and she also worked as a librarian and a horse breeder, and she avoided public attention just completely, entirely. Juliette Hulme returned to England, and she changed her identity and eventually became Anne Perry. Now, when Juliette returned home, she lived her life as a flight attendant. And then she moved to the United States and she became a nanny. She also became really involved in religion and then soon settled in Scotland. So after Juliette was released, she also was really silent. She lived a life quiet. She didn't talk to anyone about this situation, obviously. I mean, she changed her identity. And no one really cared anymore about this story. I mean, the story kind of just was swept away and nobody really talked about it until Peter Jackson made the movie Heavenly Creatures. And Heavenly Creatures is released and everyone loves it. And boom, everyone wants to know, where the hell are Pauline and Juliette? So, according to AdamAbrams.com, there was an investigative reporter named Lynn Ferguson of Sunday News. They revealed in July 1994, when Heavenly Creatures was playing in film festivals, that Juliette Hulme's present identity was Anne Perry. Anne Perry, the famous crime novelist with over 50 novels to her name. Anne Perry was insanely successful. So this journalist calls Anne Perry's agent and says, hey, do you understand that Anne Perry is Juliette Hulme? And of course, at that point, Anne owned up to it. She didn't even really care. She didn't have any remorse. She says that she had to do this because Pauline would kill herself if she didn't help her kill her mother. So even to that day, this reporter figuring it out and talking to her, she was still like, I really don't care. I have this new life. Look at me. I'm a crime novelist. Please do not, I don't want to talk about that past life. So actually what she did say in 1994, when her identity was revealed, it seemed so unfair. Everything I had worked to achieve as a decent member of society was threatened. And once again, my life was being interrupted by someone else. It had happened in court when, as a minor, I wasn't allowed to speak and I heard all these lies being told. And now there was a film, but nobody had bothered to talk to me. I knew nothing about it until the day before release. All I could think of was that my life would fall apart and it might kill my mother. On April 10th, 2023, Anne Perry died at a hospital in Los Angeles after suffering a heart attack. The day after her death, her novel, The Fourth Enemy, was published. And as of this episode in 2026, Pauline Parker still lives a very reclusive life. Now, people say that these two had zero contact, but these two also remained single. They only lived about 100 miles away from each other, and some people are convinced that they did actually secretly have a relationship. And then people were so convinced that a play was even written about this entire situation. Did these two secretly still get together? Were they lying to everyone? And this play was called Fale à Deux. Fale à Deux is a play by Trevor Schmidt exploring a fictionalized secret meeting between Juliette and Pauline 20 years after they murdered Pauline's mother in New Zealand. And the play focuses on the intense obsessive madness of two, a bond that led to the crime, echoing the real-life case where the girls planned the murder to avoid being separated. The Parker Hulme case remains one of the most disturbing examples of how intense emotional dependency and a shared fantasy can spiral into violence. What began as a friendship between two lonely, imaginative teenage girls became something far more dangerous. It became an isolated world where their bond mattered more than reality or even human life. Thank you so much for being here with me today. I hope to see you all again next week. And in the meantime, stay safe and stay paranoid. Residue is created, hosted, written, researched, edited, and produced by me, Chrissy Champagne. Residue forever. Bye.